Houthis say they will attack more ships in the Red Sea and threaten to launch a fifth stage escalation. A girl dies by drowning as heavy rains and flooding hit major areas in Al-Mahra province. Israeli occupation continues to bomb Gaza as the ceasefire talks in Cairo halt. Good evening, welcome to Yemen Today News. I am Abir Ali. Houthis claim to attack 112 ships in the operations were carried out by the group during this week with 10 ballistic and winged missiles and a drone. This report has more.
The Houthi group in Yemen claimed responsibility for attacking 3 ships in the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean, while its leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi vowed a 5th phase of escalation and claimed responsibility for attacking 112 ships since last November. The Iranian-backed group has been attacking ships under claims of supporting the Palestinians in Gaza and trying to prevent the navigation of ships linked to Israel, as well as American and British ships, and announced last week the expansion of attacks to the Mediterranean Sea. The leader of the pro-Iranian group claimed that the group has sensitive, important, and influential strategic options, and that it does not care about all the threats it has received and is prepared for all possibilities. Al-Houthi threatened to target any ship that transported goods to Israeli ports and said that the 4th phase of the escalation that was announced a week ago would include targeting any ships of any company related to supplying or transporting goods to Israel and to any destination they will go. While threatening a 5th stage of escalation, he acknowledged that his group had exploited the war in Gaza for more mobilization and recruitment, as the number of trainees in military mobilization and rehabilitation reached 296,000, calling for more. The Houthi attacks affected the interests of more than 55 countries, according to the US military, and threatened the free flow of trade through the Red Sea. The attacks prompted more than 10 major shipping companies to suspend the transit of their ships through the Red Sea. This caused an increase in ship insurance rates in the region.
The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations said that it had received a report of a failed hijacking attempt of a vessel 195 nautical miles east of Yemen's Aden. The vessel's master reported being approached by a small craft carrying 5 or 6 armed people with ladders. Houthi militants in Yemen have launched drone and missile attacks on shipping in and around the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. Presidential Leadership Council member Abdullah Al-Alimi received the U.S. ambassador to Yemen, Stephen Wagan, to discuss national, regional, and international developments and the efforts made to bring peace to Yemen. The meeting touched on a number of economic, service, and security challenges facing the Yemeni people as a result of criminal Houthi practices, including attacks on maritime cargo ships and international shipping lines and their disastrous repercussions on living conditions in Yemen. Innocent people pay the price with their lives as the result of the heavy rains and flooding, as what happened to the child Samira, who died after drowning in a water basin left by the rain in Al-Mahra Governorate. This report has more details.
These people live on the sides of the floods despite the danger threatening them, and despite the warnings and calls to leave from here, they insisted on remaining as they are not aware of what may happen to them when natural disasters occur. Samira, who was 10 years old, died from drowning in the floods around her tent. Her family couldn't do anything to save her.
These incidents happen all the time during the rainy season and flooding that our country is witnessing. We call on the authorities to solve this issue and protect the lives of citizens.
Samira's family didn't realize the danger of staying on the side of the floods and ignoring the warnings that were directed to them until they lost their child and paid a heavy price. They lived here where tents were hung under mountains that were ready to fall, and with the torrent surrounding them and all the residents facing great dangers every day, either from falling rocks or from the flow of torrents.
People should stay away from the rain and floods and find safe areas for the children and families. Also, the local authorities should arrange for the field visits to raise awareness and warn people to stay away from all the dangers.
The majority of the blame and responsibility are not only on those living in these areas, but also the concerned authorities are responsible for such disasters, as it has the right to prevent in accordance with the law and even punish those who refuse to leave dangerous places. This is what was confirmed by the citizens here, calling on the concerned authorities to evacuate those living next to the flood before the disasters occur.
The UN General Assembly is expected to vote on a resolution that would grant new rights to Palestine. The United States voted a widely backed Council resolution on April 18th that would have paved the way for full United Nations membership for Palestine. Under the UN Charter, prospective member of the United Nations must be peace-loving, and the Security Council must recommend their admission to the General Assembly for final approval. The main United Nations aid agency for Palestinians closed its headquarters in East Jerusalem. The head of UNRWA said that he had decided to close the compound until proper security was restored. He said Thursday's incident was the second in less than a week. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received a phone call from Antonio Guterres about the events in the Gaza Strip. The official spokesman for the Egyptian presidency stated that the call between Sisi and Guterres included a review of the development in the situation in the Gaza Strip. The two parties talked about what the current circumstances require of concerted international efforts to make the current mediation efforts successful. About 110,000 people have so far been displaced from the city of Rafah. The head of Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said about 30,000 people are displaced from the city every day, explaining that most of these people have had to be displaced 5 or 6 times. Israel occupation forces continue to bomb and attack Palestinians despite ongoing negotiations. This report has more.
Following the departure of peace mediators from Cairo without reaching a deal, Israel conducted more strikes in the Gaza Strip on Friday. According to sources, artillery strikes were launched on Rafah, the territory's southern border with Egypt, while witnesses reported airstrikes and fighting in Gaza City further north. Israel and Hamas negotiating teams left Cairo Thursday, following what the Egyptian host termed as a 2-day round of indirect talks on the terms of a Gaza truce, and after that the delegation of Hamas departed for Qatar. Israel rejected the mediators' proposal and made objections on several key topics, Hamas said in a statement to other Palestinian factions. Also, Hamas announced on Monday that it had accepted a ceasefire agreement put forward by mediators. The plan, according to the group, included the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza, the repatriation of Palestinians displaced by the war, and the swap of hostages held by militants for Palestinian detainees jailed in Israel, with the goal of achieving a permanent ceasefire. The office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described the proposal as far from Israel's essential demands, but stated that the government would still send negotiators to Cairo. In the latest UN Security Council meeting, Antonio Guterres described the situation in Gaza as a humanitarian hellscape.
In Gaza, 6.5 months of Israeli military operations have created a humanitarian hellscape. Tens of thousands of people have been killed. 2 million Palestinians have endured death, destruction, and the denial of life-saving humanitarian aid, and they are now staring down on starvation.
Until now, more than 34,000 Palestinians have been killed, and the death toll is expected to be much higher, with many thought to be buried under the rubble of buildings that collapsed during Israeli attacks.
Coming up in the news. Journalist union leader Mohammed Shabita survives an assassination attempt in the capital, Sana'a.
As you can see today, this is one of our classes where we are having children aged starting from 9, 10, who have not been enrolled in the formal education, but in countries like Yemen, that has been suffering from a protracted conflict since 2014, more families and children are internally displaced. As these children and families move from one location to another, their access to education is interrupted. Even when families are prioritizing their children's education, schools in the host communities might find it very hard to accommodate the increased number of children who are coming and want to go back to school. And the result is more children are out of school across the country. UNICEF, in collaboration with its partners and with support from ECHO, is providing these families, children and communities with a second chance to education through its accelerated emergency learning programs, as we have been working with families, communities and children to increase their awareness of the importance of education. We have been seeing more children coming to our classes every single day.
Welcome back. Journalist union leader Mohammed Shabita survives an assassination attempt against journalists and media professionals in Yemen. The National Union of Journalists denounced the murder attempt on Mohammed Shabita. Secretary General of the Yemen Journalist YJS. This report has more.
Following the latest horrific incident in a series of human rights violations against journalists and media personnel in Yemen, the National Union of Journalists has condemned the assassination attempt on the Secretary General of the Yemenese Journalist Syndicate, Mohammed Shabita. On the 7th of May, an armed shooter stopped the car where Shabita, his cousin, and another relative were traveling near the Ministry of Information in the capital Sana'a. The shooter proceeded to open fire towards the union leader, injuring him and tragically killing his cousin. The YJS released a statement verifying that Shabita received 2 gunshots in the leg and 1 in the abdomen. The union leader was subsequently transferred to the hospital where he is currently receiving treatment. The NUJ has joined the International Federation of Journalists and its affiliate the YJS in condemning the attack, sends his condolences to Shabita for his loss and urges the authorities to conduct a thorough investigation into the crime. The YJS is closely following the developments and will provide more information when available. IFJ General Secretary Anthony Bellinger said the authorities must immediately open an investigation to clarify the circumstances of the heinous attack against our colleague Mohammed Shbeita and his relative. Bellinger conveyed his best wishes for his colleague's recovery, adding that Yemen is a hostile country for journalists, where their safety is jeopardized, and the investigation must take into account Shbeita's role as a journalist and union leader. In an annual report on the status of press freedoms in Yemen in 2023, the Yemeni Journalist Syndicate monitored 82 cases of violations from January to December 31st, 2023, committed against journalists, photographers, media outlets, media headquarters, and journalists' property.
The purchased energy companies threatened to stop their services in 3 Yemeni governorates. The escalation of the purchased energy companies came with the deterioration of the electricity service in the city of Aden and a complete outage of service in most neighborhoods. The energy companies also asked the government to sign the expired contracts within a period of 2 weeks from the date of this memorandum. At the Ministry of Electricity and Energy in the interim capital Aden, Prime Minister Dr. Ahmed Awad bin Mubarak chaired a meeting to discuss the measures implemented to address power outages. The meeting touched on plans and programs to overcome the existing problems in the electrical sector and ongoing efforts to implement maintenance work and provide oil derivatives for generations. The Government Undersecretary discussed with the representatives of the number of United Nations organizations the progress of the operations of its mission in the liberated areas of Hodeida. The meeting touched on the continuing violations of the Houthi militia against the people of Hodeida, the latest of which is the looting of their lands as well as abuses and mass arrest on charges of intelligence and espionage. During the meeting, the governor confirmed the keenness of the leadership of the local authority in the government to form a joint mission from United Nations human rights agencies. The Undersecretary of Marib Government, Abdul Ruba Muftah, discussed with the new director of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in the government the areas of humanitarian partnership and cooperation. The parties discussed the significant decline in funding and humanitarian interventions by partners and the repercussions of the economic crisis in Yemen on the displaced and the host community, in addition to continuing coordination in the aid and care program for the illegal immigrants to the government from the Horn of Africa. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Houthis say they will attack more ships in the Red Sea and threaten to launch fifth stage escalation. A girl dies by drowning as heavy rains and flooding hit major areas in El Mahra province. Israel occupation continues to palm Gaza as the ceasefire talks in Cairo halt. This is the end of the news. Thank you for streaming with us. It was Abir Ali.